Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Game of Two Halves podcast. This is the first of a weekly series where we'll be talking all things football. Today, I'm joined by Rory, Matty, and Liam. We've got a Blackburn fan, a Burnley fan, and a Liverpool fan in here. I'm sure you'll get to know who supports who once we get started. So, without further ado, we're going to start off by looking at the Liverpool City game. Mackie, you're the resident Liverpool fan here, so let's give us your thoughts on the game.
I think Liverpool looked like a team beat from 1-0 down. When Gundogan scored the first goal, we were very lucky not to go in at half-time trailing. I think it was a penalty that got us back in the game. It was soft, but he pulled on Salah, and you can't do that. And obviously it's a Phil Foden masterclass for 90 minutes. No one could get near him. See, 2 goalkeeping errors, but you can never have a go at Alisson for what he's done for the club. He's he's won us a Champions League, he's won the Premier League with us, the best goalkeeper I've ever seen at Liverpool. So I don't want to get too bogged down into him, but definitely title race finished, and hopefully we can secure top 4 football, because I think Europa League would kill us next season, playing Thursday, Sunday with our squad depth.
Yeah, you mentioned squad depth at Liverpool, so you've been without your first choice centre-halves for a few weeks now. I know, Rory, you're keen to come in on Liverpool centre-halves.
Yeah, I mean, they've been missing Van Dijk for most of the season, but he did play in games like the Villa game where they still conceded 7. This Liverpool team's just not looked the same this season, whether they've had Van Dijk available or not.
I think I'd agree with you there. Even before the Van Dijk injury, Liverpool certainly weren't hitting the heights they've hit last season. Whether that's down to the front three as well. We've seen players like Firmino as probably the prime example, who's really been struggling for any sort of form this season. What do you think about Firmino, Matty?
I think Firmino's one who I think many people have an opinion on him for the way Liverpool play. I think obviously he's a massive part of that, but he's been struggling to find the net for coming on a year now, hasn't he? And there's only so long a striker can not find the net before you have to start asking the question like, is he what we need for the squad, or do we need to look at getting a replacement for Firmino? But I'm not a Liverpool fan personally, but I think ask any Liverpool fan. You could ask Liam. I think every Liverpool fan loves Roberto Firmino. He can all the goals he scored and all the assists he's created throughout the years he's been at Liverpool. He's a top quality player.
Yeah, Mackie, you're itching to come in here. If, for example, I know Jamie Carragher talked about it on Monday Night Football not long since, about breaking up that Liverpool front three, and this is the 3rd year they've been together, and how he said most front threes will have a 2-year shelf life. If you were going to replace anyone out of that front three, would it be Firmino?
I wouldn't personally want to replace anyone from the front three. I think Firmino naturally plays deeper. He wears the number 9, but he's not a number 9 type of player. I think that's just testament to how good he is, or has been in front of goal. Maybe past couple of seasons it's dipped a bit, but he's still not performing too badly. I'd like to see Firmino maybe jot deeper, and you can put Jota in there when he's fit. So I think there's a way of fitting them all 4 in, which we have tried this season when all 4 of them have been fit. So I don't see that really being a problem. I wouldn't want to personally drop Firmino, because, like Mike said, every Liverpool fan loves Roberto Firmino. He's high work rate. He'll do anything for the badge. So I'm pretty happy with him.
Go on, Rory. You want to come in on that?
I mean, like Mackie just said there, he's not a traditional number 9 in the sense that he probably is more suited to being an attacking minded midfielder rather than a striker. But at the same time, like you mentioned before, when a striker's not scoring goals, you have to start asking questions, because he's getting outscored by midfield players as well. It's not just he's not scoring enough goals for a forward, he's scoring less than midfielders are. Like, look at City's team. Like, Ilkay Gundogan's got 9 goals or something in his last 11 games. Like he's not just performing poorly for a striker. He's not getting enough goals regardless of where he's playing.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned Gundogan there. He's been playing really well lately, and someone else who I want to talk about in the City team who certainly yesterday was sensational, Phil Foden. I'm gonna come to you, Matty, on Phil Foden because I know you're quite a big fan of his.
Yeah, he's a quality player, isn't he? I think you just need to watch the second, the third, and the fourth goal yesterday, and it tells you all you need to know. It's nice to see as a neutral, especially with the Euros coming up this summer, that he's having such a big impact on Man City. It's only a good thing for us as a country. Taking him to the Euros this summer. It's nice to see him getting some first team football week in week out and showing everyone what he's about because he's a fantastic player, and I think we're quite lucky in that sense at England at the minute that we've got players like Foden, like Maddison, like Grealish, all these creative players, and like I say, it's only going to help us when we get to the Euros in the summer.
Go on, Rory. I'll come back to you because I know you're a big fan of Foden, and I can vouch for the fact that you've been banging the Foden drum for a good couple of years now, probably at least.
Well, I remember first talking to you about Foden after I saw him in the under-17s World Cup when England won it and he won Player of the Tournament. He's been struggling to get minutes in the City side, but that's not really due to how good a player he is. City have a ridiculous depth when it comes to the squad. So I think the fact he's now getting minutes, it really does put him, like Matty said, it really does put him in the window for getting into the England team and hopefully starting to nail down a starting position in the England squad.
Go on, Matty. You want to come in on that there?
Yeah. I was listening to his interview after the game, and to be honest with you, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on his actual age, whether he's 19, 20, but for his age, he speaks really well. He speaks really, really well and gives a good interview, and he strikes you as a person quite similar to Marcus Rashford in the fact that he's just a nice, genuine fella. He doesn't strike you as arrogant at all. I know he had his troubles with Mason Greenwood in the England setup back in, was it October maybe, but he doesn't strike you as the type of fella who's arrogant at all. He just seems a nice, genuine lad, which you don't always get them in football.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly there between you, especially from an England point of view. Going into the Euros this summer and potentially the World Cup in 2022, he's really coming to the fore at the right time. But just going back to Liverpool, and I'm going to ask you, Mackie, you did touch on it earlier, but is that the title race over as far as Liverpool are concerned now? And if it is, then what are your ambitions for the rest of the season now, just to finish in the top four?
In my opinion, maybe Klopp will think differently, but I think the title race was over before City. I said if we beat City, I'll start to believe that there's a chance that we could retain the title. But for me, it's completely over the title race. Like if we can scrape fourth the way it's been, then that'll probably be the success. So yeah, top four is priority now. Forget the title, that's gone. Just think about getting back in the Champions League next season, doing what we can in the Champions League this season, and just pushing on from there. It's a write-off season really for us.
How big of an impact will it be for you, Mackie, without Champions League football? You mentioned the fact that you've been poor this season and you need Champions League football, but in terms of recruiting players, surely the Champions League is where you need to be at. All the best players want to play in that competition.
Well, if we weren't a Champions League regular side, we would never have signed someone like Thiago, for example. So it does bring in that sort of level and caliber of player. I don't think we'll do anything in the Champions League this season. I think there's too many. I think there's too many injuries, and I think the team just isn't striking at the minute. I think they're good enough to beat Leipzig. I just don't. The way they're playing, I just don't see it happening. So it's all about just focusing on the top four, stay in the Champions League, and then really push on next season.
Go on, Matty. You want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think going back to the title, I think it's Man City's to lose, isn't it? At the moment, they've got 2 games in hand or 1 game in hand. I think I can't quite put my finger on which one it is, but you look at the season where they won the title when it went to the last day between them and Liverpool. I think they got beat to Leicester, didn't they, on Boxing Day, and I think after that they didn't lose a game until the end of the season. So, and they're on a great run at the minute as well. So, it, from my point of view, do I see anyone beating Man City anytime soon? No, I don't. And to be honest, they're missing 2 of the best players in Kevin De Bruyne and Sergio Aguero. So if you bring them back into the fold as well, definitely Man City still lose at this point.
Yeah, I think that's just about right. Definitely City's to lose now. So if we go across the city to the red side of Manchester, United, some might say, are in the title race. Perhaps not after the weekend's result. They were 2-0 up against Everton and somehow conceded twice within a matter of minutes, and Everton drew it back to 2-2. Took the lead again, only to lose it again in stoppage time. Dominic Calvert-Lewin converting. So, Rory, are United still in the title race, or do they just not have enough to catch City?
I don't think they're in the title race anymore, but I'd put more of that down to the team's mentality rather than their actual ability, because they've got some incredible players, but whenever they go on a good run, get themselves into a good position, and then as soon as people start expecting something of them, that's when they drop off, and that's when they start to lose games and drop points.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. They've dropped quite a lot of points this year. Thinking the Sheffield United game at home, not that long since, then the Everton game are the two that really stick in your mind. Not to mention the fact they actually hosted City not that long ago in the league back in December and drew 0-0. Those are the games where they really seem to struggle, especially the home form this year has been really poor. Matty, what are your thoughts on United?
I think for me, I firmly believe Man United are one injury to a player off debatably even getting in the top 4, and I don't think we even need to discuss which player that is because I think we can all guess. But if Bruno Fernandes was to pick up an injury for Man United, I think they genuinely struggle to even get in the top 4. You look at Man City with Kevin De Bruyne, they can replace him instantly with the likes of Gundogan, the likes of Phil Foden, the likes of Fernandinho. Who the Man United replace Bruno Fernandes with if he gets injured? So
Fred.
Fred is it Fred? Are we comparing Fred and Bruno Fernandes? I'm not too sure. Obviously, you've got Donny van der Beek who's struggling to get a game at United, but Bruno Fernandes, he's just so key to the way Man United play. He's such a good player, and since he's come a year ago, he's had such a big impact on that Man United side. And they look very good with him in the side, I must admit. But do I think they're in the title race? No, I don't. I don't think I do, to be honest with you. Now,
Go on, Rory, you want to come in on that?
I do agree with what Mike's just said about Bruno Fernandes. If he gets a big injury, I think it'll have a similar effect to since Liverpool have lost Van Dijk. Like Bruno Fernandes, if you like, one game that sticks out to me is when United played West Ham and they were losing at half time. Bruno Fernandes came on, completely changed the game and won the game for him. And it's difficult because Solskjaer can put a good run together for United, but it always seems to be down to individual moments of brilliance. Like Rashford will score a free kick, or Bruno will pop up with an absolute worldie. and I just don't see it lasting. So for me, that's why I feel like the title race is not really in their wheelhouse just yet.
Yeah, I think this season I'd agree with you. It's definitely a bridge too far. Don't think they really have the squad depth. They were quite good defensively at the start of the season, but since then they've really struggled. I think they're struggling to find someone to play alongside Maguire, who himself hasn't really been performing too well recently, in all honesty. So, coming to you, Mackie, would you say United are somewhat similar to yourselves in the fact that a top four finish this season would be a good season for them?
Oof, it's a good question. That I think if you're a United supporter and you did finish in the top four, the way the season's been, I think you'd be disappointed that you didn't do more to push for the title from the position that they were in a couple of weeks ago. And I know they've had the struggles somewhat earlier in the season, but they really started to put it together and group a few good performances. So I think top four is a success for any club to get in the Champions League. But I still feel like they'll be disappointed, especially if they don't maybe finish in the top two this season.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. Coming from top of the league only a couple of weeks ago to then just pushing for a top four finish will surely be disheartening for United fans. But I'm sure what will be even more disheartening will be the manner in which they probably threw the lead away against Everton the other day. 2-0 and cruising, to be honest. Everton didn't really lay a glove on them in the first half. Came out second half a different side, got the early goal. And it's that early goal which we're going to talk about. So for me personally, I think the keeper should do more. I think it's quite weak of him to save it out straight to Decore, who taps in, and at that point, I think the game swung in Everton's favour. It's a game-changing moment that could easily have been prevented, in my view. And I think De Gea is someone who he must be on borrowed time in the United team. I think sometimes he just gets a start because he's David De Gea, and there's still a bit of a stigma around him that he's the best goalkeeper in the world, when in fact he probably isn't anymore. I think his performances have backed that up. I know, Rory, you've got a few views on David De Gea.
Yeah. Well, if you look back at the form of Dean Henderson when he played for Sheffield United when he was out on loan, I think his performances far exceeded those of David De Gea, which, while you can argue one was playing for Sheffield United, so was getting called into action quite regularly in comparison to De Gea playing for United, but Henderson was putting in very good performances, and it was against the same opposition that De Gea was playing against as well. So I think there's not a lot of room for sentiment in football these days. So I think it's time United probably start looking towards the future rather than thinking about the past.
Go on, Matty. What's your views on De Gea?
Obviously, De Gea's he's a world class keeper. There's no doubt in that, is there? But I know Rory mentioned Dean Henderson then, and I remember Dean Henderson coming in against. It's ironic actually. It was against Sheffield United, and he dropped a clanger, didn't he? Um, is is Dean Henderson all that good? I'm not too convinced. I'm not too convinced he's actually the answer for Man United, but one thing he has got going for him is his age, and he's only going to come on, isn't he, if he plays games? So I think De Gea's been a top class keeper for Man United over the years, hasn't he? He's kept him in many games and won in many games. And let's be honest, he probably could and maybe should have gone to Real Madrid quite a few times. So um, it'd be nice to get a Man United fan's point of view on this, but I think De Gea is still a top class keeper personally, but is it time to give Dean Henderson a go? Who knows? But like I say, I think he had his game against Sheffield United himself, and he dropped a clanger.
Go on, Mackie. You're the resident goalkeeper around these parts. I know you've played between the sticks a few times. What do you think of De Gea?
I know Rory said there's not a lot of place for sentiment in football, but this is David De Gea. If you look at from 2010 to 2020, that decade, David De Gea was the best keeper in the Premier League, in my opinion. And I think that's got to speak for itself in some respect. The level of class that he's got. The thing is, United are very lucky. They have. Well, is Romero still at United? Does anyone know? Because if he
I'm
is,
not too sure off the top of my head.
if Romero is still there, he is. So there's 3 top quality goalkeepers that Man United have. Dean Henderson, I think, probably take out Liverpool and City, and other than United, could probably start for any other Premier League club. I think he is a good goalkeeper, and I think he proved that last season. And he could well start for England, but I don't think he will at the Euros just because of his game time that he's getting. But he is a good top quality keeper. And then you've got Romero, you don't see, who's Argentina's number 1. So there's 3 top quality goalkeepers. So for De Gea to still be top of the pack, I think that's testament to his class. And I think he is one of the best goalkeepers the Premier League's seen, probably in the top 5. So, and keepers make mistakes. If you make mistakes as a goalkeeper, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be punished. And so you're going to see mistakes here and there. You'd see mistakes off every player in the world. They just don't get punished the same as when a goalkeeper makes a mistake. So that's my opinion on it.
Go on, Rory. You've been itching to come in for a while now.
I think I agree with what they're saying about De Gea being a very good goalkeeper, and he's put some good performances in for United, especially over that 10-year period between 2011 up until now, really. But for the last couple of seasons, we've started to see mistakes sort of creeping into his game, and I think the argument that I'd make about Henderson making a mistake against Sheffield United is I'd rather see, as a fan, I'd rather watch a young goalkeeper make those mistakes because he's learning on the job than watching an older goalkeeper who maybe is past his best make similar mistakes. Because at least you know that he's improving, he's still yet to reach his potential.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you mean there. I think Henderson probably does deserve a bit more game time. He's found his chances very limited, hasn't he? He's only really had in the Premier League that one game against Sheffield United, and he was unfortunate to make the mistake he made. I think he was just that much under pressure that he needed to perform in that game. It almost showed in his performance. But moving on from United onto the team that he played, Everton. Matty, are Everton top 4 contenders?
I'm not too sure. It's a tough one to call. Obviously, it's anybody's game this year. The league's so close and tight that you don't know you don't know who to score. You don't know who to place your money on. Essentially, to be honest with you, Chris. But I think I'm right in saying Everton are another team who have a couple of games in hand. So I know you're saying if buts and maybes here, but if we do pick up 6 points from them 2 games, they're well within the picture of the Champions League, aren't they? Really, they brought in Josh King in the January transfer window, player my team Burnley were so called after, but that's a really good signing, and it gives them that little bit of squad depth to maybe, if there is an injury to one of the front 3, Josh King's a very good replacement to bring in. So they look. I know it might be tough for someone like Mackie to say, but Everton do look. They look good this year. They look different this year to previous years.
Yeah, if I said to you that in the last 10 games, Everton are actually second in the form table. Obviously, you've got City well away, winning 10 out of 10, but Everton are in second. They've took 20 points out of a possible 30 over the last 10 games. So, Mackie, surely for yourself, someone who's pushing for that top 4 spot as well, you must be looking over your shoulder a little bit thinking, these men could catch us.
If I'm being totally honest, it's not just speaking from a Liverpool fan, but I don't think Everton will get top 4. I think not this season anyway. I think next season, I think they'll finish in definitely a European spot, but I think next season when they'll probably get, because Mazzari's, he's giving Ancelotti the backing, and Ancelotti's obviously world-class manager, but things take time, and I think they'll finish in the Europa League, they'll have a decent squad depth to them to play a good Europa League squad and a good Premier League squad, and maybe in the next few seasons the top four will come in. I think my top four is City, United. I think Liverpool will be in there, and I think they're a bit of an outside team at the moment, but under Tuchel, I think Chelsea will come good and scrape a top four finish. And then I think behind them, you got Everton, and then your likes of Everton, West Ham, Spurs, Villa, Arsenal type of clubs.
You've just brought me nicely onto the next point there, which I'm going to come to you for, Rory. You mentioned the top four there, and there's so many teams vying for that top four. You've got obviously City and United, your top two. Then there's Leicester, Liverpool, Chelsea, Everton, Spurs, and then not to discount or discredit the remarkable efforts of West Ham and Aston Villa as well. Surely, perhaps they might not have the squad depth, but surely we've got to be talking about them in the same breath as the other teams.
Yeah, I don't think you can write off anyone up within maybe the top 8 at the minute for the top 4 because it's incredibly tight at the top. But West Ham have been brilliant this season. Obviously, they've made some good signings. Kufal at right back from the Czech player. I think it was from Slavia Prague, and Souček as well, who they made his loan a permanent. He's been absolutely incredible. Him and Declan Rice have been a great partnership in midfield. I think Lingard will be a good addition for the rest of the season. I think the thing with Lingard was I don't think he was at the level that United needed, but I think he's more than good enough to still make an impact in the Premier League. As we saw his debut, he scored twice against Villa. But yeah, I mean you can't write off anybody who's up there at the minute. I still think Leicester will have enough to finish inside the top 4 with the likes of Maddison and Tielemans, and Harvey Barnes is having a great season. And you can never write off Jamie Vardy, who's just an absolutely incredible goal scorer. So I can't really see any outsiders making the top 4. Maybe, unless you still consider Leicester as an outsider. For me, I think I can see it finishing as is, or maybe even Liverpool slipping out with Tuchel taking over at Chelsea. Yeah.
Go on, Matty. You're waiting to come in on that.
Yeah, I just want to give a lot of credit to Dean Smith and Aston Villa, especially this year. I'm looking at the table now, and they've played 21 games and got 35 points. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they finished on 35 points last year, or maybe even less. So, to have the amount of points that they've got now it's a massive achievement. They've got 2 games in hand on Chelsea, and if you win the 2 games in hand on Chelsea, I know again it's your if buts and maybes, but they go above Chelsea and they go above Liverpool by 1 point as well. So they've gone out in the summer, and I think they've addressed the positions they need. I know they paid a lot of money for the likes of Ollie Watkins and Emi Martinez, and that they've paid 50 million for just those 2 players there, but they've gone out and they've addressed the positions they need. And look at Ross Barkley on loan. That's a great signing. You only have to pay his wages for the year. You've not paid that much for him in terms of you've not paid a transfer fee for him. So I think to get him on loan for the season was a no-brainer. And they just look really good this year, don't they? Matty Cash at right back. He's been different gravy this year. He's been unreal. He's been looked really good. So's Matty Target at left back as well. I know they signed Matty Target last year, but he's just looked really good, Villa, this year, and they're really exciting to watch as well, I must admit.
Yeah, I think you're right on Villa there. I think the base of the success, or the core of that defence, certainly is sort of players who they brought in last year. So Matty Target, who we probably didn't notice last year, has been outstanding this year. And then the centre-half partnership of Konsa and Mings is just completed now by the fact they've got a right back and a goalkeeper as well. And like you say, Watkins is on fire up front at the minute. They've got Grealish, who he's in the form of his life, isn't he? He's played in the Premier League last year, but not to the effect he's having this year. He's been outstanding, but you touch on Villa's 2 games in hand. The 2 games in hand are actually against the top 4 rivals, so they've got Everton and Spurs at home as their 2 games in hand, so certainly chance to gain on the others in the race. But we're going to move on from the top 4 now, and just going to touch on some of the refereeing decisions from the weekend. So obviously news has broke today about Mike Dean. He's not been given a game in the Premier League next weekend. He's received some terrible abuse on social media after his decision to send Thomas Souček off after consulting with a VAR in Saturday night's game between Fulham and West Ham. So I'll come back to you, Matty, because you've raised your hand. What are your opinions on the Souček red card?
I think it's a poor decision from Mike Dean, to say the least. Is the abuse? He shouldn't be getting any abuse on social media. That's not on. It's not on at all. But to say it's a poor decision is it's a poor decision. There's no beating around the bush. It's a terrible decision. I think the fact that he even had to go to the VAR, the fact that Lee Mason even told him to go to VAR is a travesty, to be quite honest with you. The guy's 6'7". He apologises as soon as he does it anyway. And I don't know if you've seen his interview on BT, but the fella seems to me like he's one of the nicest fellas in football. So I think to send him off was very harsh, and I think justice has been prevailed in the sense that it's got rescinded, and I'm happy it's got rescinded because he's in my fantasy football team as well, so even better.
I certainly don't think Mitrovic did him any favours with the incident where he rolls about on the floor, but yeah, I'm like you, he's in my fantasy football team as well. Go on, Mackie.
I just think Matty touched on it, but you just have to condemn. You just have to condemn what's been happening on social media to the threats that Mike Dean and his family's received. You know, these are human beings. These officials, they're going to make mistakes, and obviously it was a mistake, but he should never have been sent off. But it's a mistake. You know, he's a human being. Things happen. There's bigger things to life than football, and I think we just need to make clear that it's not on. It's not on, the abuse, and you know, I'm glad that he's decided to take this weekend off Mike Dean. He's asked not to be officiated. You know, hopefully it dies down a bit. But it's a different debate. But you know, more needs to be done because people are just hiding behind accounts and using it to threaten other human beings, and it's just not right.
Yeah, you're right, Mackie. That's a great point you make there. But I'm going to stay with you actually, Liam. So you touched on it earlier about Mo Salah. Is that a penalty to you?
I watched it again just before we came on here, and I think if you look from the angle facing the players, Ruben Diaz does make an attempt to pull him. It doesn't work, and then he has his hand on his arm, and he does probably make the notion of trying to pull him back. There's not a lot in it. I have to admit it is soft, but I think it is one of them. It's soft, but it's a penalty. Not that it changed the outcome of the game.
Go on then, Rory. I know you've got strong views on this. We've spoke about this off air, and I think you've got your own views on this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a penalty really, but I think with the way football is now, those are getting given more and more. Like you used to see this all the time, like players running alongside each other. There's a bit of argy-bargy going on, shoulder to shoulder, and nobody would make anything of it. But nowadays, players are willing to go down it because they know they'll get that penalty. So I don't think you can't hold it against Salah. He's doing what almost every other attacker in the Premier League will do, and they go down, they get a penalty, and you've got a very good chance of getting yourself back in the game. But I think it's very, very harsh. Although it was you've not said this many times this season, but it was poor defending from Diaz, who sort of flapped at it a little bit. and sort of played himself into danger by not managing to get rid.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. It's soft, but in the modern game at the minute, you can see why it's been given. And just one more that I want to talk about on this, and I have my own views on this, which probably sort of contradicts what a lot of other people have said. But the pundits after the game last night between Sheffield United and Chelsea briefly touched on it, and it's the Timo Werner penalty. Now, it looked clear and obvious at the time that it was a penalty, but the more I watch it back and the more I think he touches that ball past Ramsdale and he isn't getting to the other side of it. I don't think he's going to get on. He just touches it past him and just carries on running into the goalkeeper and goes down. Now, yes, Ramsdale, he should know better and he shouldn't come flying out like that. But to me, I think it's quite a harsh penalty. Rory, you want to come in on this? What are your views on it?
I'm inclined to agree, to be honest. I think Vernon knows he's not going to get the ball, so I think the next thing to come into his mind is, I'm going to play for the penalty. Because, like you said, it's poor from Ramsdale to just come charging out, because he's never going to get to the ball. He's never going to win the ball. I think Werner did play for it, but it's very poor from Ramsdale. He's had some shocking performances this season. He's really not lived up to what we all thought Sheffield United were getting after he had a decent season for Bournemouth last year.
Go on, Matty. You're waiting to come in on that.
I think it's a soft penalty, isn't it? But I think most penalties are soft these days. There's not many penalties where you think and you can say, you know what, that's a bang on penalty. I think Ramsdale goes down, doesn't he, about 5-10 minutes later with a head injury because of the nasty blow he took to the face from Timo Werner's knee. But one thing I will say is, I'm a Burnley fan, obviously, and Barnes' penalty against Liverpool, is Barnes ever going to get to the ball? I'm not too sure he is, and Alisson does make contact with him, fair enough, but I think them two penalties are quite similar in the fact, yes, they're both soft, but are they penalties in the 2021 Premier League, in the 2021 game? I think I'd edge for yeah.
Yeah, you bring me on nicely to the next point there, actually discussing Ashley Barnes and Burnley. So we're going to just briefly discuss the Burnley ownership. So news has come out in the last week or so about the new owner of Burnley, Alan Pace, as a member of ALK Capital, and supposedly scrambling around for 30 million to make a next payment to the directors, or the old directors, should I say, of Burnley Football Club. And me and Matty are both Burnley fans, and it's quite worrying. New guy comes in and he's American, he's a smooth talker, and he tells us everything we want to hear, which is great, and we give him time and we want to believe him, but then this comes out and it's quite worrying. So the club's now saddled with £90 million worth of debt, supposedly, according to The Guardian. And the cash reserves that the club had been used to buy the club. Quite concerning, because especially at the moment with the pandemic and what have you, it's been nice to have some cash reserves with no fans being in the stadium. It's been a welcome boost for us in many ways. But I know, Rory, you're a Blackburn fan and you've been through the ownership issues before. You perhaps don't see any similarities between the two clubs. But as a Burnley fan, how worried would you be personally?
I think it doesn't look great, does it? I think that the fact that me and you have spoke about this off air, Chris, where, like I said, the thing with Blackburn is we owe money to the owners, but it seems like Burnley now owe money to people that the owners have borrowed money from as well. So it puts Burnley in a bit of a rocky position where it's not going to be a case of the owners can put off when payments need to be repaid because they owe money elsewhere. So it really doesn't leave Burnley in a good light. I would be worried because I'd say in January Burnley really needed to strengthen, and the fact that they were haggling over a couple of £1 million for the likes of Nathan Collins from Stoke and stuff like that, I would be quite worried.
Go on, Matty, a Burnley fan. It'd be nice to hear your thoughts on this. I know we've spoke between us, and I think we both share the same views in the fact that we're actually quite concerned.
Yeah, it's very concerning to say the least. I think Rory touched on, and Rory's a Blackburn fan himself, and that's an outsider looking in, but it, it's quite evident and quite clear to see that in January we needed additions. Obviously, I think we might be able to limp to the end of the season, but we needed additions, and the fact that this has come out now, it really gives the signal to me as a fan that that money isn't going to be available in the summer either. Now I don't want to jump down the guy's throat. He's only just come in and we don't know how true it is, but I think the one thing that Burnley fans do need at the minute is reassurance, whether that's from a tweet, whether that's from Alan Pace's on Twitter himself, isn't it, Chris? And he said when he first come in, he said he was going to use Twitter to interact with fans. Now, all Burnley fans want at the minute is a tweet off him saying, "You know what? This is rubbish. It's not true." And the longer it goes on, the more worried you get as a Burnley fan. To be honest with you, and it's scary to say the least. He was keen to use Twitter to interact with fans. Now, I think the longer it goes on, the more worried you get as a fan that you know what, wow, maybe this is true. And I think if we do need to raise 30, 40 million, you know where that's going to come from, don't you? We've got talented players at Burnley like James Tarkowski, wanted in the summer by West Ham and Leicester. If we're honest, he is probably going to go in the summer. We've also got Dwight McNeil, very talented player, and you've got your obvious one is Nick Pope in there. So as a Burnley fan, it's really worrying at the minute that we might have to sell some star assets in the summer just to pay off this debt.
I'm going to come back to you in a second, Rory. I just want to get a view from Liam as like a complete neutral. Like Rory's been through the turmoil that Venky's left Blackburn in for a good while with where they endured relegation and what have you. So he's probably better placed than yourself to give a view. But as a Liverpool fan, bigger club than any other on offer here tonight, how do you view Burnley? Should we be worried?
I mean, the only similarity that's happened recently, you look at obviously all our local side, Wigan Athletic. You look at them, and you'd hope it's not. You hope it's not a Wigan Athletic situation. If I'm not as in tune with this situation as all you are, but if the owner is interacting with fans on Twitter, like Matty says, then they must be serious about the club. They must be wanting to win people on board, and you can't believe everything that you read. All clubs have faced financial trouble. You just don't know how deep it is. But if it is true that you have got to raise money, then I think if I was a Burnley fan, I'd be worried because, like Mike said, there is a lot of talented players there. You look at Pope, McNeil, Tarkowski. That's just to name a few, and to lose them would be critical, and it's not something you want to go through. But I think it's nothing to be worried about.
Go on, Rory. You've been keen to come back in for a while now.
I want to just touch on what Matty said about where Alan Pace said about communicating with fans through Twitter and social media and stuff. I think one of the things that is the most worrying about the situation is that when a journalist supposedly asked a member of the group ALK Capital about the situation, they said no comment, which in my view implies that at least some of it's true. Because surely if you're in a situation like this and it's completely false, you shut it down, you get it out of there early.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think the silence has been quite deafening and it's almost told its own story. I think as Burnley fans, like Matty said, we just want reassurance. So, Alan, if you're listening, please just give us some reassurance. Just moving on from Burnley now, and we're going to drop down a division to the Championship, we had a big game Friday night. Swansea hosted Norwich. Swansea ran out 2-0 winners in that one, and really put the pressure on Norwich and the teams around them. Really put a marker down. Swansea, a really good side, playing good football, got a good young squad. Just added Conor Hourihane. He seems to give him a little bit of a boost they need. Coming back to you, Rory, you're a resident Championship fan, really. Swansea, good value for a top 2 finish, do you think?
Yeah, I think Swansea are going to get one of the 2 automatic spots this season. Like you said, the addition of Conor Hourihane, somebody who knows the division well. He obviously recently promoted as part of the Villa side. I think he's going to bring a lot to this team. Obviously, got some good loanees like Gueye on loan from Chelsea. Got some good players that have come through their own ranks with Matt Grimes, Cabango. They've really got a good young side. Obviously, top scorers as well. I think it's Jamal Lowe and Andre Ayew who have both got 9. So they've got multiple players that can score goals and ultimately help them win games.
Go on, Matty, you're itching to come in on that.
Rory just mentioned Jamal Lowe, and we watched quite a bit of Jamal Lowe, didn't we, last year, Christopher and Liam? We watched quite a bit of him at Wigan Athletic, and especially after the restart, he came into his own at Wigan Athletic. And I think if I'm right, I remember seeing a tweet, and I think they only ended up paying around 800,000 for Jamal Lowe, which, again, it just goes to show how sad times are at Wigan Athletic at the minute, because they lost a lot of key players in the summer. You look at Anthony Robinson, who went to Fulham in the Premier League, and they paid about £2 million for Anthony Robinson. And again, we watched him last year, and he's a top quality player, and it's just sad to see how many players Wigan Athletic lost. But speaking of Jamal Lowe, I think we all see when he scored against Watford, he went into the corner and give Ben Foster's what's it called, GoPro, a little wave. I thought that was quite funny, to be fair.
Yeah, he certainly had the cycling GK off there. Mackie, coming to you. I mean, if I told you the top 3 in the Championship at the moment was Norwich top on 55, Brentford second on 54, Swansea third on 53, Swansea and Brentford with a game in hand on Norwich, and then the teams below them, Reading, Watford, Bournemouth, all with probably another 2 wins to make up any real ground on the top 3. Who do you back to get them top 2 spots?
I'm just looking at the table now myself. I certainly back Norwich to get the one of the top 2 spots in the automatics. I know maybe the run of form recently hasn't been, quite at the level they want, but I think they are the definition of a yo-yo side. So I think they will come back up, and then maybe in a couple of years, if this is still going, we'll have a debate saying, will Norwich go back up to the Prem? So I certainly think that Norwich will go up. Obviously, with Brentford, it's a tricky one. Will they bottle it like last season? Time will tell. And I think not necessarily for a top 2 spot, but you can't write out a Neil Warnock side in the Championship with Middlesbrough. I know they've played 28 games, but I certainly wouldn't be writing them out for a playoff spot. And then, for the automatics, Reading started the season really well, but they've dropped off a bit. Could they find the form again? Swansea said they've hit the form. Can they push on? Watford, they've got quality in their ranks. It is a tricky one, but I'd have to go. My automatics are, I'm going to say Norwich, and I think Watford will climb a few places.
Go on, Matty, use your top 2.
If I was picking a top 2, I think I'd go with Swansea, like Rory said, and I'd go for Brentford. I don't think we'll see the same thing that happened last season. Obviously, one thing that I will say about Brentford, they've got they're fantastic when it comes to the transfer market, is what I'm trying to say. Obviously, we all know they sold Ollie Watkins in the summer to Aston Villa. and then for 30 million, and they've gone out and they've replaced him with another top quality striker who couldn't stop scoring for Peterborough last year in Ivan Toney, and now he's repaying that money and he can't stop scoring himself, and it really, really does ask the question: if Brentford aren't to go up this year, would a Premier League side come calling for Ivan Toney? Because I look at our team, Christopher, and I'd certainly take Ivan Toney. It's almost as if Brentford are everyone's second team at the minute, and everyone's just kind of itching for him to go up. I'd certainly like Brentford to go up. It's just a different side in the Premier League who you've not really seen before. So we've had we've had Norwich, we've had Swansea, Reading, haven't been in there for a while. Watford, Bournemouth. I think for me personally, I just want to see a couple of new teams who've never been in the Premier League before. And obviously, they've got the new stadium as well. So when fans are allowed to get back in, I'm sure that place will be bouncing just like Griffin Park was.
Yeah, I think I'd echo your sentiments there. I'm a great admirer of the Brentford model, so bringing players in young, cheap from abroad, and well, not necessarily abroad, but young and cheap, and selling them on. I mean, we've had a couple off them. We took Tarkowski and Andre Gray, and then even the front three last year. I know a lot of it's been broken up, but Ben Rama and Watkins both earned massive money moves to the Premier League, and it leaves Brentford with a tidy profit. And I know, Rory, you're a great admirer of Brentford too, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to reiterate what Matty said. I don't think any club in the country recruits as well as Brentford do. They always seem to find these players out of nowhere. I'd say they've got probably the best left back in the league, Enrico Henry. Obviously, they bought David Raya from Blackburn, who I always thought was a great shot stopper, but I thought his distribution always left a bit to be wanted. But that seems to have come on leaps and bounds since he's been at Brentford. So I think more than anything, whilst the recruitment's good, I think it's the way they develop players as well. I can't remember a player that they signed that flopped really, because like you said, the likes of Ollie Watkins, Ben Rama, I don't think anybody expected them to go to the levels that they really did when they were signed by Brentford.
Go on, Mackie. What's your views on Brentford? You've been waiting to come in for a while.
It was just a question aimed at Matty on the back of what he said about Brentford. Obviously, they've produced some very, very talented players who are seeing in the Premier League now. So it's just my question is, do you think Brentford are just a feeder club? And if they did manage to get into the Premier League, would they be able to keep hold of all the top quality players that they currently have now, such as Ivan Toney, Rico Henry?
Do you want my job, Mackie?
Just thought it was an important question to ask him.
Well, Mackie, I think it's a really good question, mate. I think if he were to come into the Premier League, what reason would players have to leave Brentford? Obviously, they've got the new stadium, like I mentioned earlier, and it's Premier League football at the end of the day, Mackie. So I struggle to see where else players would leave to go if Brentford went up. I'm sure they'd like to be given the chance to play in the Premier League. You look at teams like Leeds, especially this year, who've flourished when they've come up from the Championship, playing some great football, giving teams like Man City a really good go. I remember watching the game at Ellen Road against Man City a few months ago, and I think that's been one of the best games in the Premier League so far this season. So Brentford play similar football, maybe not as high intensity as Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds, but they definitely play good football, and I think we need teams like that in the Premier League, don't we? I think so many teams enjoy playing out from the back, playing with the ball at the feet, and I think Brentford had definitely add that to the Premier League. So I really struggle to see why players would want to leave Brentford. I think there's so much going. They've got so much going in the right direction at the moment.
Well, it seems like we've spoken about everyone else's team other than yours, Rory. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you here now. You're on the fringes of the playoffs yourself. Disappointing to lose to QPR 1-0 the other in your last game, but do you still harbour faint hopes of making the playoffs?
There's always a hope as long as it's mathematically possible, really. But the issue I have with Blackburn is we'll go on a really good run, put ourselves in contention for the top six, and then as soon as that seems like it's a possibility, that I think that their heads go, the nosebleeds start. We're too high in the table, and the performances just dip. Like at the weekend against QPR, we had a couple of good chances. We forced some good saves from Seny Dieng in the QPR goal, but I think a lot of it's really we've really dropped off in terms of our goal scoring. At the start of the season, we were banging them in for fun, but and plus it's tricky when we've really struggled to beat sides. Well, the top sides in the league. I think we only managed to beat a team in the top half the other week when we beat Middlesbrough. That's the first time we beat one this season that was in the top half when we played them. So I think it's possible, but I feel like maybe it may just be a season or two too far for us just yet.
Yeah, so I think that's a great summary of where you're probably at the moment. An outsider, but definitely in with a chance. So to finish off today, we're just going to look at the FA Cup. So the FA Cup fifth round takes place this week. So obviously the winners going into the quarterfinals. Some great chances for some teams who perhaps are struggling in the league or haven't been to a cup quarterfinal for a good while to get into one. So I'm just going to rattle through the games one by one, and then I just want a one-word answer from each of you, so you can just take your mics off mute for the time being, and then I'll read the fixtures out, and then just give me a one-word answer as to who you think goes through in the tie. So we've got Burnley Bournemouth up first.
Burnley.
Go on, Rory. Matty.
Oh, I'm going to go 2-0 Burnley. Although Bournemouth, very good side, could go either way, but I'm going to edge for a 2-0 Burnley win.
One word answer,
Liam.
Matty, yeah.
Oh, sorry, mate.
Go on, Liam.
Bournemouth.
Man United, West Ham, Rory.
West Ham.
Matty.
Man United.
Mackie.
Man United.
So we've got Swansea v Man City. Go on, Rory.
City.
Matty.
Yeah, no brainer, Man City.
Mackie.
Have to agree. Clearly Man City.
Full house for City. Leicester, Brighton, Rory.
Leicester.
Matty.
It's a really tough one. I think I'd edge for Brighton on this one.
Mackie.
I agree with Matty in the sense it's a tough one, but I've got to go with Leicester.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Leicester as well there. Sheffield United, Bristol City, Rory.
I'm going to go with Bristol City.
Matty.
I'm going to agree with Rory. I'm going to go with Bristol City. They seem to be playing some good stuff this year. I know they were in and around there at the start, but I'm not sure quite where they are at the moment. But I'm going to go Bristol City, and that was well more than one word again.
Mackie for the full house.
I am going to agree with Rory and Matty and say Bristol City. Unlucky against Brentford a few days ago, and Sheffield not doing very well at all, so I'm going to say Bristol.
Full house of Bristol City there. Probably the standout tie of the round now. Everton v Spurs, Rory.
Everton.
Matty.
Everton.
Mackie.
I'm going to say Spurs.
Close. I think I'm going to edge with Spurs as well in that one, to be honest. Wolves and Southampton, Rory.
I'm going to go Wolves.
Matty.
Yeah, go for Wolves. Just
Mackie.
again, another close
Two out of form teams. I'm going to say a draw and Wolves on penalties.
And finally, this is an interesting one for me. I think there could be an upset here. I'm going to go Barnsley v Chelsea, Rory.
If Lampard was still in charge, I would have said Barnsley. But I think Tuchel's got might have got Chelsea back on track, so I'm going to go Chelsea.
Matty.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Rory, going Chelsea, although just Barnsley have got some standout players this year. I know a name I keep hearing at the minute is it Callum Styles? Is that his name? Yeah, Callum Styles having a great season for Barnsley, but no, Chelsea, surely.
Mackie.
Chelsea comfortably.
I'm going to go for the upset. I'm going to go for Barnsley. I'm going to go for the upset there. But that just about wraps up today's podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back again next week to digress another weekend of Premier League action.